Welcome to Conscious Living here at the Specially Produce Network. We are so glad you're here to support your lifestyle with the fastest growing resource for conscious families. So sit back, relax, connect, and enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conscious Living. I'm here live in San Diego, and I'm so excited with my guest today, Erin Berry, NLP trainer, master coach. You're awesome, and I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ashley.
Please share a little bit about yourself and what you do in the world. It's so fantastic.
Well, thank you. For me, NLP is a way of life. It's a way of, elevating the consciousness of those around me. Our language, our words are powerful. There's one lie I would like to dispel,
Awesome. What's that?
and one truth I would like to share. When you're kids, you heard the saying that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Right.
It's not true.
It's not true.
A very wise poet and influencer once said, the pen is mightier than the sword.
It sure is.
Yeah. Quick example, I was out to dinner the other night with a wonderful lady, and we started talking about, how all things are relevant, and, how all things, if you break it down to the lowest possible, pieces and particles that we know of, it's all energy. And she goes, yeah, I just don't believe in that good or that bad energy. And I said, well, tell you what, let's do an experiment. So I took 2 napkins off the table, and I asked her if she had an ink pen. She pulled it out of her purse, and I wrote on each napkin 3 words behind my food. She couldn't see what I was writing. I wrote 3 words on each napkin, and I rolled them up. I put them over here, and I did a muscle test on her. And I said, okay, stick your arm out. Let's see how strong you are. Go ahead, Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to use the same resistance every time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I handed her 1 napkin rolled up in her opposite hand. And I tested her again,
Mm-hmm.
and her arm went down.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, what's up with that? I said, well, here's another one.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave her, and her arm stayed solid
Mm-hmm.
that time.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, what's going on? I said, well, I'm going to take that napkin away, and you put your arm out. You notice it's exactly the way it was at the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Why did one napkin make you stronger and the other one made you weaker?
Right.
She goes, I don't get it. So I unrolled the napkins and I let her read the words.
Wow.
I said, it's the same piece of paper. It's the same ink. But your words have the power to create the world that you live in.
That's beautiful.
And by accepting those words that I handed to you on a piece of paper, you accepted that energy, those symbols, that language into your life, even just for a moment.
Right.
And so that's why NLP is so important for me. The words that we use literally create the world that we live in.
That's correct. They really do. What were the words on the napkins?
So the first one was anger, hate, and sadness.
And that was the one that made her weak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I handed that one to her first.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one was happiness, love, and joy. And, well, she said, thank you. She said, I would have never believed it. Thank you for doing that experiment and that test with me. I would have never known.
Right. The power of the words.
Right.
Right. Because those words become an embodiment.
Well, they do.
Yes.
The very fact, here's another way to look at it. The very fact that those words exist in your vocabulary means that somewhere within you is an opposition.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take the image of that napkin that had the words on it that I didn't necessarily need. And I'm just going to take that and I'm going to crumple it up and I'm going to throw it over here in the trash can. I'm going to take a match out and I'm going to strike it and I'm going to drop it right in the trash can, and that napkin's gone, and now all I have left in my imagery is that napkin, right?
Yeah.
That says happiness, love, and joy. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful illustration of how words have power.
Yeah.
And opportunity for us to have different experiences in our body of whether we feel that inner strength or we feel that inner weakness.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And, that's why it's so important to pay attention to what we allow in our circle of influence.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
That includes our own circle of influence, right? Our own thoughts and feelings.
Well, immediately.
Yes.
Immediately. I may get this quote incorrect, but if I don't, then Richard Branson has got some credit here. He was once quoted on an interview, and the reporter started asking him questions, and he just grabbed the mic and shut it down. He says, "I will not even allow this line of questioning to enter my thoughts." So our interview's done here.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as a master trainer,
yes,
practitioner, where I help people transform their mindset by giving them new languaging patterns,
yes,
ways to look at things.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a judge of what somebody thinks.
Yeah.
I'm a trainer of how to think.
Right. So you really hit on a high point there. So you're like a physical trainer, like with someone that works on patterns in the body, how we move our body, how we move our muscles,
Mm-hmm.
how we ergonomically, right, relate to the world in physical training and physical therapy.
Correct.
You're like a language therapist.
Sort of.
Wow.
I'm more of like a language Jedi.
Wow, I love it. That's awesome. So what do you do as far as the Jedi? How do you bring the Force into this process?
Well, that would go right into consciousness.
Yes, it would.
And that would probably define or describe our alignment here this morning.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's been said in certain circles of influence in the religious communities that as above, so below. If you watch my body language, I'm not saying that the unconscious mind, when in alignment with the conscious mind,
As we're nodding our heads.
correct, allows us access to our higher conscious selves.
Absolutely.
And if you could not eliminate the self-talk, but get it into alignment with the heart, because the heart has its own intelligence.
Absolutely.
And we've all heard of muscle memory, right?
Absolutely.
Right? Well, the heart's probably the biggest one.
Yes, it is.
And it's got its own memories.
It does.
We'll talk about transplants
Yes.
and donors
yeah.
and receivers. And, sometimes someone after a transplant, they get these memories that they didn't know where they came from.
Exactly.
Well, that's because memories are stored holographically throughout the body.
They sure are.
And so every one of those living cells has its own level of intelligence. And if the unconscious mind isn't in agreement with the conscious mind, there's conflict at the deepest levels.
That's for sure.
And that almost brings a tear to my eye just to say that.
Yeah.
Because I live in a place where I want to speak from my heart always. And so for me, NLP isn't about the manipulation of others. It's about manipulating my own thought process.
Well, what if it could be also called like mastery?
Well, it's
Right?
self-mastery.
And commanding, and not commanding or insisting or demanding or pushing,
Mm-mm.
but commanding in the sense that I became conscious that I can guide my thoughts and feelings.
That's correct.
Yes.
Actually, that's the absolute point right there.
It's beautiful.
It is. What if you could be the master of your own reality,
Absolutely.
right? So,
That's
like,
what supports joy and happiness.
well, it does, and that's why we took some other napkin that we didn't need, and we put it in the trash can and lit it on fire, and it's gone, and all we're left with is what we created in our moment right now.
Correct.
So unconsciously, if you're paying attention, and if you check in with your heart, you can see that napkin with those three words on it
Yes.
of happiness, love, and joy, and we know that there was something else there once upon a time, but it's gone.
Right.
And if it's okay with you and I and everyone here, if we could just simply let those other things that were once go.
Right.
We don't need them in our lives. They don't support us and they don't support others.
That's true.
So if you could become, well, why do I call it ABC NLP Mastery?
Why do you?
Well, ABC stands for Aaron Berry Coaching Consulting Company. And then NLP Mastery. Because the only thing worth mastering first is yourself.
Yourself.
That's right. Very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank everyone.
Yeah, thank you for
Right.
being here today.
Yes, self-mastery is what we're talking about, and facilitating that and providing that for people. We live in a society right now where we haven't yet fully enveloped this idea of teaching self-mastery, right? Even from infancy. I even talk about in utero, right?
Right.
But start there.
Right.
And we can start teaching babies, fetal babies, infant babies,
Mm-hmm.
toddlers, preschoolers, kids of all ages, young adults,
Mm-hmm.
and then when we become parents.
Yeah.
And provide that opportunity of developing those languaging patterns with each other,
Mm-hmm.
how we relate to our life circumstances, right? And then how we do it inside of ourselves. And it, like you're saying, it starts with the self.
It does. It does. And once you realize that you actually have the ability to not just connect with yourself or be at war with yourself, because it's really easy to hold on to what might be a not nice feeling. It originates somewhere lower than eye level,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to actually focus on it and grab on it to feel that. Okay?
Right.
But feelings of happiness, love. Love is like an expansion feeling. Happiness gets you to lift. Love is like an expansion of the chest. And joy is like the entire body lifting inches off the floor.
Exactly. That exuberant feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what if you could choose to live there?
Like every day.
Right.
Even sometimes if there's problems or chaos in the midst,
Right. Well,
setting in that space, right,
the
supports our
problem-
navigation.
here's a thought for you. Problems and chaos. What if they weren't yours?
Yeah.
What if you always made sure that you were coming from your own best place,
Right.
and that problems or chaos were simply a situation that was created in the world at the moment?
Correct.
So I've had several experiences in life where things were life-threatening, and the unconscious mind simply stepped out of the way. There was no fear.
Right.
There was no anger.
Right.
There was only action from the higher conscious self potential. It's we've all heard of mothers with superhuman strength, saving an infant from
Right.
an accident or something.
Right.
That's real,
Yes.
because for a moment the unconscious mind steps out of the way, and the only thing that's left is pure strength, pure energy, pure belief,
And pure love.
and pure love.
Right.
You make me cry, Ashley.
That's beautiful.
That's a beautiful thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
It
And
really
so
is to
where
elicit
did right,
those gifts inside of ourself.
right. And that strength came from that unconditional love.
It sure
It
did.
didn't come from anger. It didn't come from hate. It didn't come from sadness. It didn't come from, trying to organize something in one way or another. It came from that moment where life realized that there was something more important and that life should be, exacted.
Absolutely.
So, for the few out there who've seen it, for the few out there who've experienced it, and for the greater number out there who haven't yet seen or experienced it, look for it in your life. Look where life chooses itself over death.
Absolutely.
Or
It chooses love over fear.
well, yeah. There was, if I could paint a picture really quick, a large cliff and a pine nut
Yeah.
found its way into the crevice
Yes.
at the crack at the top of this cliff. And the winds came and the rains came. And that little pine nut, it sprouted. And as it sprouted, it grew. And it worked its way through the cracks of this cliff where there was nothing else living up there. It was a barren cliff.
Wow.
And it worked its way, its roots, into both sides of this cliff. And it actually grew out in an angle to reach the sun better, because if it tried to grow straight up in the crack, it couldn't get the light that it needed. But it chose to stick itself out of the cliff and reach for the sky, reach for the light.
Yes.
Right. And so some people go, how on earth and why on earth is this pine tree clinging to the cliff?
Right.
Well, it wasn't clinging. That's where it was placed.
Right.
And it decided to create life out of itself and produce something because its mission, its purpose in life was to fulfill its calling.
Right.
Something larger than itself.
Something larger than itself.
That's right. And I'm not saying that every single one of us has a purpose.
We can.
And every single one of us has a calling.
Yeah.
Because, well, that might just be too grandiose for some to believe.
It could be.
That it's absolutely true.
It is absolutely true.
That's right. So that's NLP.
That's NLP.
Yeah.
And share with us just for a few moments about why the gods have no fear.
Well, let's say for a moment that I'm not suggesting that anyone in this podcast is that pine nut.
Right.
Right? And that once they have gotten through, a certain point in their life, they might realize that they were destined for something greater.
Yes.
And that's when the roots start to go deep. That's when they start thirsting for knowledge and wisdom, the inner guidance.
Yes.
And as they connect with the crack on the side of a cliff, I'm afraid to grow. It didn't have a choice.
Right.
It knew its purpose.
It did know its purpose.
Yeah. So,
it was ingrained in its very being.
and interestingly enough, every single individual, well, and this is actually coming from a doctor here, Dr. Bruce H Lipton, who was a microbiologist.
Yes.
Some people know of his work. Only 2% of the population can claim that a result or their problems in this world are resulting from a genetic defect. There are chromosomal things, there's gene things, there's stuff that's handed to us but it's not necessarily ours. And every single individual is born with the blueprint of perfect health built into the intelligence that took up the body.
That's correct.
So, why would the gods have no fear? Well, because the gods chose to place these intelligences within bodies and allow them to grow and allow them to learn and allow them to create what it is they needed to create to become successful in this world, just like that little pine nut.
Absolutely. That is so beautiful. So it's all within us
It is.
to create the seeds of life.
And to sprout them, to nourish them, to grow. And my father, he's a great guy. I love him. He was putting something out there to me the other day, and he says, Aaron, I this week I'm just off my cycle. I didn't have the strength or the energy to work out like I wanted to, and so my numbers are a little low. We're actually on an Apple challenge, and our workouts are transmitted to each other, so we know how each other is doing, and it
Yes.
helps keep us going.
Right.
And he was sharing with me his how he was off, and I said, Dad, you know everything's in cycle. The weather, what's the weather like out there right now? He says, well, it's really cold, and I think there's there's snow on the ground. And I said, well, everything's in cycle. There's a time for um, growth, and a time of expansion, and a time of harvest, and then a time of rest.
Right.
And if you realize that everything goes through these cycles, including ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our spirits, our nature, our very being, when it's time to rest, it's okay.
That's
Go ahead and
good.
rest.
Yes.
And after resting, well, comes nourishment.
Right.
So you nourish, you grow, you harvest, you rest. You nourish, grow, harvest, rest.
Right.
Right. And so this morning, it was time for me to grow so I could get here to nourish others,
Yes.
so that we can all have a harvest by the end of this day with maybe the things that we've learned.
Yes.
And tonight, when you go to bed and you simply rest, that maybe all of these things, these thoughts, these opportunities that you've experienced here this morning might allow you to nourish yourself while you rest. That tomorrow morning, when you wake, you may be ready to grow.
Yes. Every day. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have so enjoyed, and we've all enjoyed, your experiences in sharing with us the magic of language,
Oh.
the amazement of language, the caring of language, and the love of language that we share with one another. Words are so important. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome, Ashley. Have a beautiful day.
Have a beautiful day. Thank you all for listening to this podcast. We are so grateful for you tuning in and experiencing the innovations and opportunities we all can incorporate into our daily lives. Connect with us at centerforconsciouskids.com to sign up for the latest news that showcases these revolutionary services and products. Our global website provides families with an online conduit for enrichment and transformation in all our lives. Please share with other kids and families who would enjoy these advancements in living consciously. I'm Ashley Lee, and I thank you so much for joining us.